All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'd like to call the meeting to order and stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance All right, with the agenda, we want to separate 12.1 for a separate vote. And now we'll go into our reports section. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. So without further ado, I'm very proud for our Board of Education and everyone tuning in to meet the members of our National Honor Society. And without further ado, I welcome our teachers and students.
Hello, my name is William Martinez, and I am a member of the National Honor Society. We have 5 pillars that we stick to as a group. We have scholarship, and ways that we demonstrate this. We have our dedication to school by staying after school, staying with teachers, keeping our grades up to make sure that, to show that we are the best of our school.
Hi, my name is Morgan Harlan. I'm the president of NHS. For service this year, we've been working on Girl Scout cookies, beach cleanup. We've been writing to some of the elementary schoolers, planning a nursing home visit on Mother's Day. That's what we did last year. We've been doing peer tutoring, and we've also been working the booster booth at sporting events.
Hello, my name is Carolina Botts. I'm the secretary for the National Honor Society. Another one of our pillars is leadership, and some ways that we show this are having our members participate in school spirit weeks for like celebrating breaks and other holidays. We try to represent our school as well as we can in our community. We all like to participate in extracurriculars such as sports, band and choir. A lot of us do the musical and some other clubs that our school has. Many of us are team captains for sports such as basketball, volleyball, track, and soccer. And a lot of our members are also on student council and members of the Lighthouse Leaders.
Character. We demonstrate respect, responsibility, and kindness. We arrive on time, participate in class, complete all of our assignments, do good on tests, and making sure that we're bringing all that we have to make the school better. No, thank you. That's all from us.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Guys, can you come back for 1 second? Sorry. You'll go. You'll do it. You'll do it. No, that's fine.
I just asked them what their favorite service activity was, because that's one of the important pillars of it. And it's interesting because Will had mentioned that one of his favorite activities was writing letters to students in our elementary school, which is a really neat, opportunity for our young kids to interact with our olders as role models. Caroline, she mentioned that she loves going to the nursing home and, meeting with and spending time with those in the nursing homes that may not have guests regularly. And Morgan, she enjoys the beach cleanup. So, 3 different kids that are giving back to our community in many ways, and just one of the wonderful things that our Honor Society does. So, thank all of you for being here, and, Mr. Mears and Ms. Ford for being advisors and getting our kids out there in community and representing our school. Thank you.
Welcome, Megan.
So you received the first part of this presentation at the last board meeting, and I was sorry to miss it. I was out on medical leave, but glad to be back and to present the intermediate school data for our Eureka Math Squared first module. So I'm not going to go over, all the things that I'm absolutely sure Jackie did a great job covering the last time. Let me get to the intermediate school. So for our 6th graders, their first module is place value concepts for addition and subtraction. And so, knowing kind of where we are on this nice pie graph, we realized that we had a decent chunk of kiddos who came in who were proficient or highly proficient at those place value concepts for addition and subtraction, but also students who were either, sometimes they had it, sometimes they didn't, and then other times they, were really struggling with some of those. Subtraction tends to be a little bit tougher than addition for them sometimes, and then we had a very small sliver that really were struggling with those concepts, and that gives really good information for our teachers, especially for their intervention blocks that they have every day, to be able to really hone in on those very specific skills that the students might have come into 4th grade just not having as strong of a grasp of as we would want, and also be able to enrich those students who are coming in already very proficient with that concept. For 5th grade, they get into multiplication and division, which is, that's a toughie for them, for sure. So they, when those kiddos came in, we really noticed that we had over 50% of students who definitely had some struggles with that, and our teachers were really able to hone in and to kind of go back and see, did the whole group really have a problem, struggle with this? We're going to go back, we're going to reteach this concept, maybe teach it in a different way. And if it was pockets of students, that's really where they make those intervention groups, and they are able to focus on those skills with them. Now, I know that this says Module 1 data, but you're going to notice the 6th grade is Module 3. So in 6th grade, our math teacher, because 6th grade set up very much like a middle school, so we have one teacher who teaches math, and she really pushed, after doing the past 2 years of our Eureka Math Squared program and doing Module 1, which is ratios, she really pushed and had a really good set of reasons to do Module 3 first. So she gave me a ton of different reasons when she was trying to convince us to let her do it. But really what it was is that Module 3 in the program really taught more of those foundational concepts that the students needed. Module 1 had a lot of very higher level thinking and problem solving that they weren't necessarily ready for right after summer. And so this year she piloted doing Module 3 first with rational numbers, and then teaching Module 1. So, she has seen personally great success. Of course, we're still going through the school year, but that was one of the things that she really wanted to focus on, was the students to have those foundational skills and concepts before they got into some of those tougher math concepts in 6th grade. And if you're looking at the data, over 50% of our students scored, 6th grade students scored as proficient or highly proficient on that Module 3. Any questions?
Hi, it's mainly just a comment. I guess I do appreciate that, like, a teacher's able to do that, say that this makes more sense than this, and I guess it's glad to hear that the system allows for that type of flexibility to teach Module 3 before 1.
Thank you for that feedback. All right.
Thanks, Megan.
Good evening and happy 100th day of school. I know not everyone celebrates, but at the elementary school we celebrated. We had several students and staff members dressed as if they were 100. The kids loved that Mr. T was walking around the school with his walker. So if you see a picture in the district calendar next year of him sitting out in dismissal on his walker, that would be why. So anyway, we're going to kick off with the attendance presentation today. So you'll notice our charts look similar. It's going to be each grade level and their cohort size, and then the number of students who up to December 19th were chronically absent, and then what percentage equivalent that is of each cohort. So that's my first slide there. And then the reasons behind it. So illness and medical.
Hey, Jackie, chronically absent was 8 or more, correct?
8 or more, correct. Yep. So the reasons for absences, I put ours in the order of the highest number being first with illness, medical, and health concerns. As I said before in previous years, the elementary school, they're still little, their immune systems are not built up, so they're getting everything. Right before Christmas, we were hit so hard with the flu that week leading up to break. We have a lot of things in place. We are doing building-wide incentives. We earn sparkles for 95% daily attendance. We talk about our attendance rate each day. The students love, if they've had perfect attendance for the week, they have a chance to be put in to win a rubber ducky keychain. They love that. Mrs. Palmer this year has started perfect attendance postcards for each month and really celebrating those kids last year that were chronically absent who have not missed any days and keeping track of that. We have lunch groups, we have check and connect. There's individual student incentives. We have students working towards ice cream or quality time with adult. We have multiple links to outside agencies. And then we meet on this routinely over the course of the month. Looking at our numbers broken down, because I know Megan and Dave put it in, mine are kind of, they're a range between excused and unexcused. If you're looking at our kindergarten numbers, 6 of those students had excused absences, the majority of them, 4 were unexcused. First grade follows up to the same pattern, 7 excused, 5 students with unexcused absences that were chronically absent. Second grade was the outlier there, where only 2 of the students had the majority of their absences that were excused, but 12 were unexcused. And then third grade was 10 students had excused absences, the majority of them, and 4 were unexcused. But half days are still a detriment to us. Our attendance goes down dramatically on half days. We're talking 80s, in the 80 percentile, between 80 and 85 typically. Depending on if weather's a factor that day as well, it can go even lower. So you couple in illness, people leaving early for vacations, don't have childcare, and that can just like really impact us on those days. So that is impacting our overall daily average for attendance. But we have many things in place, and our students are usually at the mercy of their adults that are in their lives because they cannot get themselves up and get themselves on the bus necessarily. So it's a little bit different with our littles, and we really try to work towards working with the family to promote the importance of being in school at the young ages and making those connections. So oftentimes that's worked with having those relationships with adults in the building, having incentives, because the kids are telling their parents that they want to come to school. Any questions for the elementary school? Yes, Jason.
So one question you talk about, now just remind me, like where does it come into play where you like have to be here? Is that first grade, right? Kindergarten's kind of
Correct.
like wishy-washy, right? So is it harder to get the kids there, like for kindergarten, it's harder to like push that, it's harder to like
It's harder
get
to-
agencies involved or whatever you need to do,
Correct,
right?
because
you
it's not
can't really
mandatory.
mandate kindergarten, even though if they're signed up, is that different? Like since they're signed up for kindergarten, does that put them in a different area for that?
It's a hard scenario because you can report it to CPS, but if they'll actually take the case,
Yeah.
it depends if there's other variables and factors.
I know it's hard to get them to take the case period.
Correct.
I mean, let's be real, but.
But especially when it's not a mandatory grade level, like pre-K and kindergarten, that puts us in a different situation. It works against us.
This is for just missing the whole day. What about late arrival? I know there's instances where students are missing, like, not necessarily absent, but
That's a
missing until
whole
10,
other-
11.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother,
That's a whole other
Oh, yeah.
situation. Yeah.
but it still has the same ramifications if they're missing half the day and they're,
Correct.
ELA, whatever is in the
And
morning.
so we're
or-
looking at that as well, and because we're not, we do look at it at our tier 2, tier 3 meetings, because that's just as important, because like you said, if they're coming in at 10 o'clock, you've already missed ELA, you've already missed math, and you're going to specials and lunch. So that is important, and we work still with those families, getting here on time, having those conversations, and I've had success, like, just talking with the families, like, it's really important, these are the things that they're missing, and many parents are just not aware that we start right off the get-go. Like, it's not, we have a little downtime in the morning, but we're starting learning at 8:45. So when you're rolling in at 10:30, routinely, you are missing a significant amount of learning. So, yeah. Thank you. Welcome. Anything else?
The half-days, we bring up half-days, right? And our numbers drastically go down, and I can understand that. In the elementary school, 8:30 they get there, 11:30 is pickup time, I got that. Have we brainstormed anything in any of our meetings on, okay, if we've reached out to certain parents and what time, if they could be here at noon to pick up their kids, would we have something in place to keep them until then? Or?
The
The goal is to get them here, and I understand that, and I understand the point of half-days is normally we're going into meetings and staff meetings and all this other stuff, but if we're,
I have a question to compound onto that one.
okay. So I didn't know if we're able to come up with something where if we could get the majority, we know we can't get 100%, right? But if we could get 30% more kids here on those half-days, and it would mean us facilitating them for maybe another hour. Could we do it? I don't know how, but.
We haven't looked into that. We've looked into potentially, like, I was trying to work with the LEAP program, which offers us after-school care for our UPK kids, and we were looking into seeing what we could do with that. But it's also the logistics of that, because they operate through, where our prime time is through school age, and we do those regs. That's operated through the Office of OCFS, so like daycare regulations. So it gets a little more sticky. I can't mix age groups. Pre-K has to be separate than school age. You have different ratios. It becomes a much harder ball of wax to work, and oftentimes on those half days, they're in meetings at their own center, and through like OCFS, they're doing meetings as well. I think it's something we need to look into more, and just trying to figure out something to get more students here.
Right.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, since Eric brought up half-days, I was going to wait, what's the benefit of a half-day? Why, is there, like, do we have the necessity, they have to have a half-day, or is there
Well,
things that
some-
we can do, like, where the students aren't here and the staff's here, where we can still do our meetings and not have kids missing a half a day of instruction?
Some of it's contractual. So in the teacher contract, there's 4 half-days built into the contract for data-driven instruction. So that part's contractual. And then...
The others are parent
And then the others,
conferences.
I think you have, 3 designated half-days for...
Parent-teacher
For
conferences.
parent conferences as well, so...
So the data-driven instruction, you can't put it into just 2 days if you're giving them 4 because you need to spread it out over the course of the year? Is that the reason, or?
Well, it's remember, half-days, if you have 4 half-days and say you move it into 2 full days now, And then you're getting into instructional days because you have to have so many hours and you have to have 180 days of instruction for students. So you couldn't take 4 and just turn it into 2 days off and merge it into that one, because then we would have to adjust our schedule to figure out how we're going to get those 2 other instructional days in the calendar. So there's, there's some of those pieces. And then if you're looking at maybe moving parent conferences, say, to the night instead of during the day, then that would be some other contractual things we'd have to look at.
So you saying a half day is considered like a full day of instruction?
Not a full
on the
day, but
calendar?
it doesn't count against your full days of instruction.
Right.
So you have to have at least 180 days when kids are in school, but then you also have to meet an hourly requirement as well. And there's certain hours the kids have to be in school at different levels. So there's 2 metrics that you have to be able to meet. That's where we need to be careful even with emergency days, because even if you had a natural disaster and you had to close school, sometimes the state, will still not, relinquish those days. And I think for us, if we went below the 180 days, I think it's, what is it, Steve, a $40,000 or $50,000 penalty for us per day below 180 days. So there are metrics that we have to make sure that we meet. Just to answer your question, Jason.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else for me?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good, thank you.
We have to pay the state back? We pay?
Yeah, we would get, I believe it would probably would it come in 8 or something, Steve? If we went below 180 days, that they would deduct that from us? Is that how that would work? Yeah, we get a deduction on our rate. Yeah. I was in a meeting today, and one of a local school district was faced with that, in a previous year as well. So it's just not as easy as sometimes people think it is. Yeah.
Is that price the same for all schools?
What's that?
Is that price the same for all schools?
Yeah, it's 180 days for all students, but there's an hourly requirement at different levels. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but the hourly requirement for certain aid levels, or for certain age levels as well. So there's 2 things that we have to calculate.
All right. So at the intermediate school, again, just a reminder, when we looked at these from the first day of school till December 19th, if students at that point in time, because it's a percentage, if they were absent for 8 or more days, they were considered chronically absent. So for 4th grade, out of our 55 students, we had 5 of them who were considered chronically absent at the time. That's 9%. 5th grade and 6th grade have very similar numbers, so 64 and 65, but their chronic absent numbers in 5th grade was 15 students, and in 6th grade was 11 students. And when I broke it down, out of the chronically absent students in each one of those grade levels, if they had 4 or more unexcused absences, then that's kind of how I broke this down. So out of the 5 in 4th grade, 3 of them, the majority of their absences were unexcused. So there was no reason given. We do attendance calls in the morning, so likely that means that we weren't able to get in touch with a parent. They didn't send something through Parent Square or call the office or send, a note in with their child on a different day. For 5th grade, out of the 15 chronically absent students, 9 of them had the majority of them unexcused, and then out of 6th grade, of the 11 chronically absent students, 5 of them had a majority of them being unexcused. Oh my God, this pointer does not like me. And so I did not order them in the same way that Jackie did. I just looked at the, really the reasons that when we did know a reason for an absence, really the prevailing ones. And illness is absolutely the #1 factor. As Jackie said, I think that all the buildings got hit with the flu pretty terribly in December, right before break. We, unfortunately, when I was digging into it, we had quite a few that were because of deaths in the family that they had to travel out of town for. Again, Unexcused means no call, no message. We were not able to make contact with our attendance calls. And then we have had some travel or some vacations that students will take. So we have a lot of different interventions that we try to put into place. One of the things I believe I mentioned in an earlier board update this year is that I'm in my third year as principal, and in these 3 years, this year, we've had the best attendance percentage that we've had. And one of the things that we really focused on was those, really shouting out the attendance, really trying to, we want students to come in, have it be welcoming. But we also did interviews or like little meetings with the students who were chronically absent the year before, whether it be, when they were in the elementary and came up, or if they were in the intermediate and were not chronically absent or had not missed a day. We did those in October and November, and we were able to get some reasons from the students as to why it was no longer an issue, absences for them. So I don't want to go into much detail because it might be student data, right? Their personal information, but it was really eye-opening, some of the things that they said and some of the reasons why it was not an issue anymore. We also did a perfect attendance in October incentive. I honestly think well over 100 students received that, and meaning that they were not absent any day for any reason in October. And I mean, we have just over 200 students, so that was pretty amazing. And I know that, Jason, I think you asked about tardies, lates to school. That is now going to be our focus, because we have, really at the intermediate school, our, half days don't really affect us as much as they do the elementary. Our kids are not like as beholden to, not being able to be home by themselves or, for a couple hours. So what we really want to focus on now through our MTSS process is those lates to school, because you're right. Most of our core classes are in those first couple hours of school when the kids are at their freshest, and if they're coming in, even half an hour late every day, they're missing a really good portion of either math or ELA, and that is not helping at all. So again, many of our interventions are also very similar to the elementary school. We have check and connect and check in, check out, some different lunch groups. We have recognitions for students, individual student incentives. It is amazing how far a Jolly Rancher every day you come to school will go with some kids. We do have outside agencies. Our SRO is great at assisting us, especially with those families that we're really struggling to get in contact with. Regular parent meetings, when they reach a certain threshold, we have the parent come in, myself and our counselor, meet with the parent to see what are some barriers and are there supports that we can offer. We will do those over the phone if they can't come in. But that's been really helpful, as well as connecting them with community schools for things, like maybe, they don't have clean clothes because they don't have a washer and dryer. We can take care of that. Maybe they need food. We can take care of that. So that's been really, really great with being able to really dig deep into some of the reasons why they might not be coming to school. Any questions?
Oh, just like a thought I had when you made a comment about kids being at their freshest, like maybe in the first half of the day, and I hadn't really thought of it that way much, but do you guys often try to schedule like the more rigorous academic stuff in the earlier parts of the day before
Yes.
they're, okay.
Yeah, so this year when we did the schedule, we actually, took each grade level, and the teachers really said, like, this is kind of my dream schedule, like my perfect schedule, and every single person had their major instructional blocks of math and ELA in the morning. And so we were able to split it up so they each have a special in the morning and afternoon. Science and social studies and intervention, are in there as well. But it's hard after being in school for an entire day. You crash a little bit after lunch, you might have had PE 8th period, and then you're gonna sit down and learn, all these new math concepts, at 1:15. Like that's tough. It can be done, of course, and sometimes the schedule has to do it, but I would say that our teachers and students definitely prefer having some of that more rigorous core classes, more in the morning hours before lunch. All right.
Thank you very much, Megan. All right. There we go. All right, so very similarly, we have the data broken down by chronic absenteeism. On this slide, what you're going to see is grades 7 through 12. Any students who had 8 or more absences. So in the far right column, those are the number of students who had a combined 8 or more absences, whether they be, when I say combined, both excused and unexcused absences, okay? And if you guys are wondering where we get the 8 or more, when we look at the total number of days from September, the start of the school year, through when we ran this data, which was the day leading into Christmas break, it came out to just north of 70. It was like 71, 72. Chronic absenteeism is defined as 10% or more of the days. So we got 7 point and then like 1 or 2, so there's a decimal point. So if we wanted to be very technical about it, that's how we got the 8 or more. So for example, not to belabor the point, but essentially if you looked strictly at 7th grade, 15 total students had a combined excused and unexcused absences of 8 or more days. Now, to get a little bit more granular, as both Megan and Jackie did, if you looked at this slide here, this is the number of students who had 8 or more purely unexcused. So for example, and I'll bounce between these two slides just for a moment here, in 7th grade, if I jump back, you had 15 students have a combined excused and unexcused of greater than 8. Here you had 10. So there were 5 students in there that had a certain number of excused absences that we have in our system. Here we have, of that 15, 10 of them had 8 or more unexcused. So when you look at like chronic absenteeism, that's obviously concerning. The chart that I put on there, one of the things that we've really embarked on together as a team in the junior senior high school is our MTSS process, and not to get overly academic and start defining terms, but MTSS really encompasses academics, behavior, attendance. And one of the things that we've been working on is developing a resource map of all of our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 resources. And the example you see up there is some resources that we have used in a previous district of mine / what's available here for ways that we can provide interventions to support students. And whether that's parent contact through email, phone call, letters home, parent conferences, school resource officer involvement, CPS, Fred neglect, youth court, tutoring, mental health counseling, substance abuse prevention, local Department of Social Services. There's a lot of internal and external resources that we're trying to put together in a nice cohesive way so that we know, when we start looking at students who have a specific number of absences, what's the best way we can support the families, because a lot of families have various needs and there's various reasons for why students aren't coming to school. So I think when we have a pool of resources, we can be very specific. I use the analogy, it's like going to the hospital, right? We have, instead of a saw, we have a scalpel. We can be very specific and targeted to how we support students and their families for whatever their needs are. Any questions on the junior senior high school attendance data? Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to stay right up here because we're going to go into midterm and Regents data. So I'll start by saying a little bit of a kind of a funny joke. I started putting this data together, and initially the slideshow is 45 slides. And when I shared that with Nelson, I was like, yeah, we're going to pare that down a little bit. And the reason for such an abundance amount is because I looked at, I wanted to put together some longitudinal data to see how essentially the data broke down over the past few years. So the data you're going to see here tonight, I wanted to make this as consistent as how it's been presented in the past. So on here, you'll see on the far left the name of the test. Okay, these are all of our local tests. So you'll see the amount of students that scored 0 to 64, then 65 to 84, 85 to 100, a total of passing, 65 to 100, the total number of students who took the test, and then the percent passing. Just a few notes, because there's a lot up there. This is English, and I'll go through the other subjects as we go through this. You may not see a total number of students that represent the whole cohort as it relates to each grade level, because we're working on streamlining our processes for makeups and when students are absent or refuse to take a test, how that process goes. Admittedly, as I talked to our staff, like this was kind of happening within the first few weeks of me joining, so kind of getting a chance to observe this and then work with our teams as we progress into the next year of how we can make that process even more efficient. I will highlight on here, if you notice, Honors English 8, 95% pass rate, Honors English 7, 90%. So we did have some very strong, and then Honors English 9, 92%. So we had some strong passing rates in there. But obviously, you know, we see the data what it is, and we got some work to do. And I think the biggest thing that I would say is for this, we're never going to stop until we keep setting the bar even higher. Because I think one of the things we've noticed is when we have set high expectations with students, that's the standard for excellence that we have. I'm never going to be acceptable to say, you know, 45% passing is good because last year it was at 42%. Obviously, we want to see, you know, increases, but we're not going to settle. We're going to keep striving. So that's English. This is Spanish. Again, the charts are set up the exact same way. Just want to, again, highlight a very positive accomplishment there. We had Spanish 3, 15 students achieve passing, which is great, 100% pass rate. And if I could highlight as well, when you look at Spanish 1A, we had 33 students score in the mastery range, 85 to 100. That's that middle column, top row. So obviously that's a very strong number. And then if you look at, you know, between Spanish 1A and Spanish 1B, the amount of students, the passing, you're close to 80%. Again, it's a strong passing number. We're not going to settle, but that is a strong passing number. And, you know, obviously that's carried on with Spanish 2 and Spanish 4. The next slide here represents math. So if you see Math 7 at the top, all the way down to statistics at the bottom. One thing you may note as well, when you see a subject like, what's a good example here? Calculus. There's 6 students, obviously because not all students take calculus. So there's some where the totals just aren't as high because of the amount of students that are actually in those courses. Just to stay with the theme of the other slides, I would say if you look at the far right column, another strong, you know, percentage passing. You know, Honors Algebra 1, 74%, Honors Honors Math 7, 68%, so close to 70. You know, when you look at Algebra 1, we did have 10 students score in the mastery range. Obviously, we've got some work to do with the passing piece, but, you know, 10 students out of 81 getting in mastery, you know, we're going to keep building on that. And obviously, we have work to do. And I think, you know, we have a lot of resources set up in our building through AIS and different supports that we have with our students to try to get extra math support. And this is a good snapshot in January of where we are because we know we got our work cut out for us to get ready for June. Science, it's to be very similar to math in a sense that there's a lot of courses on there. You know, if you look at the Honors Life Science Biology, 100% pass rate, that's very strong. You know, and as just a quick note on that, we are, you know, in the transitionatory process from the old exams to the new. So when we come into June, there are still going to be, there's going to be 4 or 5, you know, 6 Regents exams that our students are taking as we phase into the new New York State testing that is out there. And then social studies, again, very similar. Math, science, and social studies are very similar just because of the amount of different courses that are in each of those content areas. I will highlight Honors Global 2 with a 100% pass rate. Honors Social Studies 8 with a 100% pass rate. Honors Social Studies 7 with an 82% pass rate. And, you know, I would really focus in on Social Studies 8. We had 20 students between Honors and General Ed that scored mastery. It's a very strong number to, again, build on. Never settle, but build on. And then we did have the near, oh,
Hey, Dave.
yeah.
Just a quick comment.
Absolutely.
As you noticed on the English 7 and 8 and Math 7 and 8, those passing percentages are significantly low. And you will remember that that was very similar to last year. One of the pieces that our 7th and 8th grade teachers have put in place is that when they're scoring those tests, which are aligned to the state assessment, as you notice with our state assessment, most schools are in the 40 to 50%, 30% passing on those 7th and 8th grade assessments. So they've scored those using that same rubric. So we have a really good indicator about how those kids will perform on the test. But somebody could say, wow, with that many students failing, because we're grading like it's a state assessment, what's that doing to their averages? So teachers are making accommodations, to adjust those midterm exams so it doesn't kill kids with their GPA. But this gives a real life look at more of an alignment with the state assessment, just to kind of explain why that is what it is, okay?
Nelson, thank you so much. I would be remiss if I would have said that. Thank you. And what I would offer to the board too as well, go ahead, you had a question.
So what would be the difference? I mean, if you're, like, English is English,
That's a really good question, Jason.
It's probably harder to...
The state assessments, the way they score them, it amazes us because there's no great explanation. A good example, you might have 30, 40, 50% of your students scoring a 3 and 4 on a state assessment. And then all of a sudden on the 11th grade Regents, you're running around 80% passing. There's a huge disconnect in that in terms of how each of those are scored. So with the aligned midterms, they're trying to score those with that same rubric, at that 3 and 4 rubric, to give us an idea as an indicator about how we're projecting on that state test. It's not apples to apples science by any means, but
Leave it to New York.
you look at chemistry, for instance. If you look at Gene's results, he had 50-some% passes midterm. That's purposeful for him because he's really given a very rigorous, aligned midterm exam in chemistry, which is a very, very difficult subject, so the kids really know how they're progressing. Now, obviously, he's not looking at a 50% passing rate at the end of the year, but we want our midterms to be very aligned and rigorous to give a really good indicator about how we need to keep working.
That's a great question. And, the piece that I was going to add to, and if you wanted, I shared with Nelson that longer slide. So if you wanted to see how these results kind of compare over the last 4 years, that data is available to take a look at. The New York State Regents test exams, I put this all onto one slide, so you'll see on there all the regents that were administered. And again, I'll just highlight, if you take a quick look at total students, which is the second column from right, really we give the ELA regents to all of our students because that's kind of skill-based as it relates to, what's the content of the test versus, our students who are in U.S. history. If you're in the course, you've only covered half of U.S. history to this point. So, we have all those students test in June. So if you're wondering why the total number of students is so drastically different, it's because of what we do building-wide. I will highlight, I do want to shout out our ELA team because I know looking at the data from last year, there was obviously a dip kind of in performance there. And, with a 74% passing rate compared to last year, in January, our team has worked extremely hard to not just prepare our students to take this, but to really work on, all the different skills that they're covering every single day. So I do want to highlight the positive work and hard work ethic that's been put into that. So, 16 students scored in the mastery range and 74% passed. That's a very strong indicator of success there. And obviously we know in the far left column, the amount of students that did not pass. We got our work cut out for us between now and June to exercise the resources that we have both in the building and that are available to us in the school community. So we're going to be working really hard to make sure that when we come June, this is our snapshot right now, and now we got to roll up our sleeves and get ready to go for June. So, it was overall, the data for the midterm piece, and now we're ready to get down to work. We have this data, now we got to make it meaningful.
And some of the students, as David said with the LA, we give that to all of our 11th graders and our 10th grade honor students. That's why when you saw the midterm, there was 0% for 10th grade honors. And then you're looking at all the other students for all of the other Regents areas. They are all students, for the most part, who failed in June, who had to retake. Now, while the failures, obviously we've made some gains with some kids. Some of our students, if they qualify for a low pass, they might have actually be able to receive Regents credit now, even though they might have scored between a 55 and a 64. So there's some students that may not have passed in that far right column, but they may have met the requirements to graduate and won't have to retake. So that's a part of the guidance process of keeping track in that. So even though all of those students who failed on that far left column, not all of those will have to retake again in June. So that's one of the things we track.
That's a great point, Nelson. And the other thing I would add too is like for students with an IEP, you can also appeal to a safety net. So yeah, same thing. Yep. So I hope that was helpful, and certainly if you have questions or want to see that longitudinal data, certainly, Nelson would have that, so.
I have one more question.
Yeah,
and I'm not
absolutely.
really sure who it's aimed towards, but, so I have friends in other districts that don't necessarily do midterms. So I guess I'm curious as to, I mean, I see that we get data from our midterms, but what's the benefit of not doing them? Like, why are some schools not doing midterms, and why are we doing midterms?
Yeah.
Other than just the flat-out data that we have?
That is a great question, Jason. It really hits a philosophical point, because I've worked in districts that do both. I'll speak from the perspective of a Sodus teacher, having taught here. I know, to Nelson's point, if there were students who would really struggle, getting that data at the midpoint, especially on a Regents exam, would let me know the data points that were there would help me give like targeted interventions between now and June. They might even have passed the Regents exam, so now I know what to maybe focus on. I would say, maybe to kind of summarize the point I'm trying to make, it's a very authentic data point at about the halfway point that you can really use. Like if you're taking your car to the shop, and they diagnose what's wrong with it, then you can be, hey, maybe there's no issues with it, we can keep driving it, or the tires are flat and I got to inflate them, right? I think, there's benefits to it for those pieces, but there's also, to your point, we commit a week to midterms. Could that be towards, just a regular week of instruction? Absolutely. I think it's truly just kind of a philosophical perspective on that, and I think, I guess what I would say is, as a former teacher here and an administrator where this system's currently in place, I tend to look for the positives in it, but certainly what I would say, just like anything else, if that's something we want to open up for discussion for the future and, work with our teacher leaders and the board, we can open that up. It's a great question.
I just was curious.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I assumed that it was somewhere in that line.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. Not every district does it. You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
What I feel like, too, looking back at that slide, we got 28 chronic absent ninth graders.
Yep.
Okay? We do this midterm exam, we take their scores from that, figure it out halfway. Then you can have that sit down, I think, with those students and be like, listen, we gave you, this is the test. Is it because you're missing 12 days at 70 days in? I don't know if you can use it to that point and push that incentive of why we need to be here, why you need to come. I'm
It's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, the other piece about that is one of the things that we've noticed in our students that they really struggle with is what we like to call stamina. And to sit down and take a Regents exam or a state assessment for an hour and a half or 2 hours can be really difficult for a lot of our students. And some districts will do more midterms in class. And what we found is that if you break that up over a 40-minute period, now you've spent 3 class periods on an exam that's chopped up. And so we like to give kids a little bit more of a realistic look of what it's like to sit down. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize that impacts our testing system here in Sodus is our test modification system. So anytime a student has to take an actual exam, if they qualify for a test mod, we have to make sure we offer it. And it gets really, really difficult if you're given a number of, say, midterm exams in class during a regular schedule instead of during exam period. You can't administer those efficiently, and you run out of people, which can impact the system as well. So there's pluses and minuses to everything. Some schools will do a typical exam schedule 9 through 12. Some schools won't for middle school. It's one of the things that we go back and forth on every year.
Yeah. A great question and a great point. It's great. Yeah, and we're getting after it every day. We're getting after it every day. But no, thank you. And like I said, if you have any questions, certainly you can let me know, and I'm happy to connect.
I'm going to ask one more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to keep going,
No,
but I mean, we look at test scores all the time, and it brings up a lot of great discussion. My other question is, we have a lot of ELL students that these classes, like some of the Regents classes, might not really be, and I'm picking on one group, and it could be multiple groups. I mean, my son's probably going into a hands-on field as well. Like, some of these tests might not line up with where they're going in life. I guess we're pushing kids to take tests that they might not need to take, and we're making our numbers look horrible, but if we had classes available or different subjects available where these students may succeed in, I mean, not everybody needs a Regents diploma.
That's a really good question, Jason. That's where the state's going with the new graduation requirements, but unfortunately, none of that's in place right now. So we are still under the old system where students still have to graduate with 22 credits, 4 credits in ELA, social studies, 3 in math, 3 in science, to graduate. Now, they're talking about those requirements changing with the 2027 cohort, correct?
I have to double check on it, but
Yeah,
it's...
I think it's the 2027 cohort. So when they start as a freshman in 2027, it sounds like there's going to be some relinquishment to that. But right now, anybody that's in the system, we're still under the old process where you still have to, minimally to get a local diploma, you still have to pass your classes, you still have to, take Regents exams, and you still have to go through that process. So they're working on it, but we're not there yet. And that does have an impact.
So when we get there, we can get creative with different classes.
We can
and
get
try to-
and we're waiting for guidance on that. It was a big rollout, I think about a year and a half ago. It stalled a little bit. There's going to be a lot of work that's going to have to be done in that because they're going to create pathways and alternatives for kids to meet requirements. Now, they're still going to have Regents exams for those kids who might want to go on to college or whatever it might be, but there will be some flexibility in how we get there. Like right now, for instance, in our middle school, 7th and 8th grade, we have absolutely zero flexibility in 7th and 8th grade for requirements. We have some students in 7th and 8th grade that, because of the requirements they have, and, say they want to take band, they want to take choir, they have maybe a resource room, or they need extra help in math or ELA or reading, they run out of room. And we can't schedule everything because there's not enough room in a student day, as an example.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think right now, too, like, the state has different, pathways, like the arts pathway. They're very specific, but, to Nelson's point, we're ever hopeful, right? Hope springs eternal, and that's not to say, what my thoughts are one way or the other on things, but that's where we are right now. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. With that, we'll go into our information section. Do you want to give us an update on the...
Yeah, so Steve, do you want to come up and we'll do the capital project status right now? We met with the architects after our community capital project meeting, and they put together some stuff, and, Steve wants to share a little bit about where we're at and where we're at right now.
I'm 50-50 whether I need them or not. right in the sweet spot. All right, so what I did is I'll briefly go through the presentation that we went through at the public meeting, and then I added a few slides based on the input we got from that meeting and the directive. So, going through, we went over the post-survey results that we had from the project that Nelson put out, and we used that, we discussed that, again, survey results. Consideration, we took these items into consideration, more information, whether it's really no tax increase, and the confusion over how capital projects work. What about the reserves and the spending on money? Few items or on some items that few students would benefit from, the turf field. And I'll touch on that a little later because I got some thoughts on that. And then we went through all the things that were included, the DOAS units, some AC, the failed chiller at the junior, senior high school, LED lighting, classroom access with keyless. Let's go. There we go. The site work, repave the bus parking lot. Again, I'll touch on that when I get to my new slides. The baseball field drainage, softball field drainage, and the turf field. Again, at the elementary school, very similar to the stuff that we were going to do at the 412 facility, with a little paving. We had a picture of a unit ventilator, my favorite place to sit in high school, and a new DOAS unit that would go on the rooftop. And the DOAS unit, if you recall, will handle 3 to 5 different classrooms as opposed to a unit ventilator just doing one. And the unit ventilators are all failing just because of their age, and we can't get parts for them. And then on the December 11th vote, we were going to use some money from debt service and cash contribution from reserves, and the total project cost was about $43,600,000 with no impact on our local tax base. And we went through how the project's developed, recent project history, the 2014, 2019, we had a couple projects that added up to over $32 million. And these are our tax rates, and you can see that over the course of 2013 to 14 through the present, that our tax rate for the district really hasn't fluctuated too much. And we went over how state building aid works. And that's money that's there from the state. That's not something that it's going to raise your taxes. It's money that's there, and if we don't access it doing a project, it's just going somewhere else. It's not like they're going to say thank you for not doing that. We went over the reserve funding, and it's all our tax dollars, and that's true, but it's out there. And I don't make the rules, I just play the game, so we might as well take advantage of it while it's there. So update from the last meeting. What we got back was we needed to split the project into 2 propositions. We had a lot of commentary on, the turf and the drainage. So what we did is we split it into 2 propositions. Proposition 1 would include everything that was in the original project. We would take out the baseball, softball field drainage, take out the turf athletic field. And I mentioned this at the last meeting that we would mill and pave the bus parking lot instead of boxing the whole thing out, and that's going to save about $1.35 million instead of taking that thing down 2 feet or 2 to 3 feet and redoing the whole thing. We would just mill it. And
How long does that get us, Steve? Just by milling it? I mean, we're driving.
Probably 15, 20 years.
Think it'll go that long?
Yeah.
With the weight of
they'll take it down pretty good.
Yeah, I'm just saying with the weight, I mean, it's not like we're driving cars across there. We're driving heavy buses across that thing all day long.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
There's a pretty good base under that thing because they've been parking buses on that for decades. So.
Gotcha.
And the reason why we decided to do that was the original proposal was to dig out and put all the infrastructure for the EV buses, which is why they had to dig down so much. But with some of the relinquishment of what's happened with the EV buses, that was the major reason for that.
Yeah.
I was just bringing it up because I didn't want to.
Yeah, we don't want it to go like this.
We mill it and it buys us 3-4 years and we're back.
No, it'll be longer than that, yeah. And in the time that we did the original project until now, we have to do a study for the state so we can apply for our waiver for a year or 2 for the EV mandate. And part of that study is we had to have a group come in and look at what our electrical and our system would look like for EV buses. And rather than the concept that we had to begin with, that we would be running multiple pieces of conduit underneath the parking lot. There's really only one piece of conduit that would go under the parking lot, and I'm not sure that they couldn't use one of those things you see in areas where they just put the pipe right underground with one of those machines and not even have to dig up the parking lot. So Proposition 1, with those items removed and changed, comes out to about 39.4 million. And then we go to Proposition 2, maybe. Proposition 2, the baseball, softball field drainage would be about 1.5 million. The turf athletic field would be about 7.5 million. I added in resurfacing the tennis courts. Some of the comments I got after the original project went through was, you really need to go look at those tennis courts. And I talked to a few people, and they're starting to crack. The surfaces are starting to crack a little bit, the coating on them, and we're getting some grass and weeds starting to grow through those. And they're 10 years old, so about a little over $90,000 to get those resurfaced and put back into good shape. And then there's incidental costs with any project associated with architects and all that other stuff. So Proposition 2 would be about 2.75 million. And I wanted to touch on some comments I heard about the turf field, that it would be used by a small number of, it's a lot of money to spend for use by a small number of our students, it'd be our athletes. And I want to put that in a little perspective. Our current field is probably used, I'd say definitely used less than 20 times a year because of the way our falls are, the rain and the mud and all that stuff. So I just kind of came up with some other things that this would be used for. Our baseball and softball in the spring, but when there's still snow on the ground, that field can be cleaned off and our baseball and softball teams can practice on it. A student would, in my opinion, would have to actively try to avoid being on that field and using it during their school career. PE classes can be out there. Olympic Day. Our summer rec programs could use that facility all year long. Local youth programs. We have summer soccer. You see all the little fields we've got laid out all over the place. They can't use our main varsity field because it'll wear it out. But if we had a turf field, have at it. And then another thing I put in the brochure was I love to see our modified kids play a night game or two during the year. Boy, talk about having some kids with smiles on their face. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So I got Proposition 1, Proposition 2. Do I have another slide? Yes. So the project cost with the two propositions would be $42,136,000. And that's a decrease of almost $1.5 million from the December 11th project we voted on. Proposition 2 cannot stand alone. If Proposition 2 were to pass and Proposition 1 were to fail, we can't do it. Proposition 2 will be contingent on Proposition 1 passing due to aid issues. Any questions on anything?
Can I ask just a quick question? Maybe you talked about this. I was able to make it the last meeting, but the big capital projects, right? We always, like you've said, we've got AC units that we can't get parts for. They've been obsolete for 20 years. Why do we have to wait until we have a $40 million capital project to be able to take some advantage of some of these fundings instead of picking say a particular building, like, okay, I want to focus on the intermediate school and redo the lights in there and redo this and redo that. I feel like every year it's a giant number that we ask the taxpayers to vote on versus just, hey, we can get funding for this amount and that replaces the chiller and the AC units at this go round, and then something. You know what I'm trying to say, Steve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess my answer to that would be when we do a project, it's a years-long process from start to finish. And in my experience, I don't know that I would want I would want to have multiple projects overlapping year after year after year. So under that scenario, I could easily have 2, 3, 4 projects going at the same time. That's probably the best answer I got for you right now, but we tend to take these things, because they're big ticket items, and if we voted and went through and did, say, just the unit ventilators, but we'd have to do the DOAS units. So that itself is going to be well over $10 million. And accessing the aid is accessing the aid, so I don't know if I gave you a real good answer, but I can look into it more.
No, I think you did. I think it's doable. It's a lot more work, obviously, but it's something that's doable, I think, right?
Yeah, with a big project, we'll get big contractors.
Sure. I'm just trying to think about, people have asked me, well, why do we have to do this all at once? And I don't know. I didn't have that answer for them, and I think that we kind of just express that. And I agree with you. Every year you're going to be overlapping. Like you said, it's a year-long thing the whole time, and it's like, okay, we got a year-long thing just on ventilators, and next year we're going to get into doors and flooring. So I get it. I'm just trying to ask the question as well.
Oh, good question. Any other questions? So my next step, if this is agreeable, I will go and take this to our financial advisors, Bernard P. Donegan, and have them put together the cost and aidability numbers on it, and I can bring that back to you at the next meeting. That will tell you, how much we want to put in out of reserves. It'll be less than the last project, obviously, because it's a lower amount.
When would you be thinking on the next vote?
That's a discussion we still have to have.
So, Steve, could you just remind the board about the next steps? So what you said, you got to figure out, what that's going to look like with reserves. So from them, then then it goes in front of the board, then they have to vote it. So would that be at potentially the April meeting? I can't remember the timeline off the top of my head in terms of working backwards.
It could be the April meeting or the May meeting. Okay. And then the clock starts ticking. Once you call for a vote, it's a 45-day clock. Okay. And we go from there, and then you set your vote date. So it could be, it could be probably any time in June, or depending on when you approve the project. All right.
Does the state money stay the same?
Yes. Yep. So, all right, I'll get this stuff to our financial advisor, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you.
If I get my glasses off the thing, here we go.
We'll kind of work back our budget calendar, our dates. We have March 2nd, 9th, 16th, and 17th, right? That's it, okay. Our BOCES vote, we have a nomination we're going to vote on later, and we'll move on. Any public participation? All right, we'll start with Rob. Shoot, welcome.
Thank you. At the recent capital project feedback session, I raised my objections to the plan based solely upon the projected costs. I'm generally not against any of the changes put forth in the plan. My objection is the numbers being used. I feel they're irresponsible and a clear money grab. More than once, I've heard the business administrator mention money that we got for this or that and how it was socked away. Do COVID funds ring a bell? I'm grateful for him having the principle of saving, I really am. But the end doesn't justify the means. The projected inflation rate for 2026 is 2.8%. The projected rate for 2027 is 2.2%. All years after that are projected at 2.2%. If I'm not mistaken, if you run the numbers, that would be an expected increase of 11.7% over a 4-year period. The capital project number used for a 3.5-year period looks to be 40% instead of 11.7. Then they add another 20% of that total that they've already increased by 40%. I've served for many years as treasurer of a nonprofit. I've been a part of several capital projects in the nonprofit space, and what is in this plan is so far out of line from reality that I've observed that it cannot be ignored. Following through on the example of the exterior door replacement I spoke of recently, the estimated cost is about $770K. Mind you, we were told you how accurate these estimates were based on the firm's fancy cost database. The expected 4-year increase based upon current inflation projections would yield about $860K. If you want to include a 20% contingency, that should be added before the effect of inflation, so it is also adjusted for inflation. So the 770 plus 20% adjustment for 4 years of inflation would yield about $1 million versus the $1.3 million calculated under the plan that was proposed. Personally, I don't think a 20% contingency is reasonable given how accurate we were told these estimates are. A 15% contingency, which is still pretty generous in my mind, would yield about $990K, over $300K less than what they put in the plan, and that's just for one item in the plan. And that also assumes that every item in the plan won't be done for 4 years, which is ludicrous. Some of that's going to get done sooner, and that it will be for every item in the plan will need to be exceeded by 20%. If you do the same math for the whole project, it would reduce the total by over $6 million, while still allowing for $8.5 million in escalation and contingencies. There isn't much in the way of long-term forecast for non-residential construction, but that's what contingencies are to cover, right? It is expected to be around 4.2% in 2026. We know that inflation is coming down and is expected to continue. But if I redo my math, assuming 4.2% year over year, that yields a $6.5 million in escalation and contingencies versus the $14.6 million in the published plan. The escalation and contingencies on the plan that was voted down was 68% above the actual estimated costs. That's too much fluff and downright irresponsible, in my opinion. Unless the next plan put forth exhibits reasonable numbers for inflation and contingencies, I will be voting no, and I encourage others to do the same. The good news in all this is that I think you can easily pass the plan, everything that was in it, if you just reduce the numbers to something legitimate instead of making it about a money grab and lining the pockets of the reserve fund or wherever else you put the money that's left over. It's irresponsible to grab substantially more money than what is reasonably needed for the project just because you can. That's why we are where we are with taxes. Even if everyone else does it, doesn't make it right, does it? Let's lead by example.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have anything for matters for board discussion? Any questions, comments? All right. Do I have a motion to approve consensus motion number 1? Jeff, do I have a second?
Second.
Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Carried. Consensus motion number 2, remember we're going to take out 12.1. Do I have a motion to approve consensus motion number 2?
Motion.
Eric, do I have a second?
Second.
Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Carried. Do I have a motion to approve consensus motion 12.1? Jeff, do I have a second?
Second.
Eric? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
I just want to wish Phil the absolute best of luck in the election, and happy you're representing Sodus there. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Any 2.0 public participation? Steve? Do I have a motion to approve consensus motion number 3? Jeff? Do I have a second?
Second.
Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Jim, opposed? Any abstain? Carried. Set the agenda for next meeting.
Yes, so for the March meeting, we will do K through 8 I-Ready, K through 6 Dibbles, and then I'm currently working with Marion to have our 2 Sodus students who've been attending the brand-new agricultural program at Marion come and share with us their experience. We have 2 students going there who are absolutely loving it, so we're planning on having them here. And then Megan is inviting a few of her intermediate school students who have been published. So that will be our March agenda.
All right, that sounds good. Do I have a motion to approve consensus motion number 4, where we'll go into an anticipated executive session to discuss the position of a particular person?
Motion.
Eric, motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Brian, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Jim? Any abstain? Carried.